Oh, worship the King, all glorious above, and gratefully sing his wonderful love. If you're watching this video right now and you are in a Calvary Chapel parking lot, especially in Oceanside, California, and you like cigarettes, please, especially if they're organic, do light up. These ones are organic. They grow in Oregon by Indians that don't want any chemicals that kill people used. So, anyway, this is King's View, and I speak on behalf of the King because my blood, Swaney, has like some Scottish Braveheart stuff in it. So since my other name means strong with the sword, Gerard, I'm supposed to like use the sword that he gave me, like the Bible, which I studied in an interdenominational study called BSF for years to make sure that doctrines of men did not make me a son of hell. And well, Revelation 2 is coming really quick, and it seems like many are in a zombie land called Christianity. So I'm just trying to be, my King's Braveheart guru and dispel the darkness a bit. So Calvary Chapel is been on my list for a while, because when I used to go there in the parking lot, it said, "No cigarette smoking anywhere on Calvary Chapel property." Which sounded really Pharisaic to me, like yeasty, to decide what? Now, no wine drinking either, especially on Communion Day? What's going on here? Didn't Jesus make water into wine and was called a drunk, and now smokers can't be saved? Really? Do tell more. Because plenty written in the Bible about incense, but not really about smoking, not even smoking pot, really. Maybe DMT, if you really looked into it, and some of these other things, but back to Calvary Chapel. See, when I went there in Oceanside, I noticed something that, well, the music was captivating. It drew me in like Toby Mac, and I do love some Toby Mac stuff, but I don't know how sold out he is for my King, but whatever. That's another subject, and I'd really need to study on that. But I've studied plenty under Calvary Chapel, so I want to focus on that because, time is of the essence, and brevity is the soul of wit, but it seems like brevity is the wit of soul to many, as these doctrines of men make sons of hell. So, starting with the cigarette smoking, I thought that was kind of Pharisaic, and then I noticed that the volunteer choir has now become worship pastors, which wasn't that what Lucifer was before he got caught up in blasphemy and kicked out of heaven permanently? At least that's how I read it. But anyway, the music was captivating and did sound quite divine, and they did even sell CDs, which, come to think of it, they sold coffee too. And that's kind of weird, because wasn't there a bunch of sales going on when the King came and got upset and threw all their money and said, "You bunch of money-changing thieves, this was supposed to be a house of prayer"? A lot of things in common here. So, well, I listened to Pastor Mike and went through his, class and everything, and We talked about tongues, and oh yeah, he participated daily on that. Alone, of course. But when he preached, I noticed that he avoided not only key teachings about the king and his kingdom come to earth, but he preached about like rapture things and doctrines of men and different other things, but not about prayer. And one time he preached about sin and how we fell with Adam and Eve, and it was really sad, and the evil heart of men, and well, it had a lot of doctrines in it, but it never talked about how when God came and found them, they weren't spending that prayer time where they talked to him every day during the cool of the day, like the evening time, when most would think it would be a good time to pray. Well, no, that was never covered. It was just about the fall of man and how bad it was and how we need a savior and the big gospel and evangelism plan and all these beautiful, flowery, doctrinal things. Got me a little lost for a while, I must admit, but thanks to that Bible study I was in, I didn't get too foggy and kept reading the truth and questioning, what is this guy trying to do? So while I was working a job nearby, I called. I actually sent him an email and said, what was that you were preaching about, and why weren't you talking about the importance of prayer? Because if we are a house of prayer, and Adam and Eve forgot to pray after they sinned, wouldn't we want to talk about that? And oh my, I got a call. And let's just say, don't question daddy was the tone I got. And was like, oh really, am I junior here? And he told me about his great seminary training and all the thick books he'd read on prayer, and he knows plenty and doesn't need any of his sheep questioning him. Just follow along or find the door, thank you very much. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I thought, have you read any of the complete works on prayer by Bounds? Is really good about how to move mountains with prayer, and that if you pray enough and read the Bible enough, you could become a modern prophet. What is that? So when I brought that up, he was like, I don't need to know about your books on prayer. I've read plenty of them already. Now, to be honest, well, I don't think he said to be honest as well. Anyway, he said, I don't really think there's that much importance in prayer. See you later. And kind of hung up. And as he hung up, I was sitting there going, Pastor Mike Reed, you have less faith than me? Is that right, Lord? Because it seems like this phone conversation I had more faith that it was seen by my king, by me, than the pastor I just talked to. Told me prayer doesn't matter that much in front of the king. And so I left that Calvary Chapel quite quickly, you see, because that's not my doctrine of men that I would trust, you see. So after I left, I told a few of my friends there, I said, hey, you better watch out. There's some doctrines I wouldn't trust there. And they said, oh, but the singing is beautiful. The preaching kind of sucks, but I love that man, and he really has been through a lot. And they literally seem to be worshiping him. So I thought that was not too good, since he was a little on the self-righteous side, and he never liked to preach that verse that said, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees, you will have no part in the kingdom. Maybe that had something to do with his attitude. So anyway, one time I told him to pray for me because I had an opportunity that I might be able to preach in a Spanish church. And he said, okay, I will. And then he said, who told you to preach? I thought it was God, but maybe you thought it was a demon, perhaps? Please do tell. I thought that was kind of strange that he seemed so interested in that part of it. So as I left Calvary Chapel and told some of my friends you might want to beware, and most of them were like, oh, but it's such a lovely place, and there's just so much love there. Be in the world, but not of the world. Sometimes I wonder if some of these churches have blended the two, and it's so lovely to feel, love, but gotta make sure, because that angel of light, he's very clever, you see. Well, anyway, so I left that Calvary Chapel and I started looking more into them and about Chuck Smith and how he started everything. Well, I didn't realize that Calvary Chapel, Inc., it's quite a big 50c3, and, well, apparently over in Costa Mesa, Orange County, where the seeds of it are, well, apparently Chuck Smith did pretty good, because last I heard he owned, hundreds of acres. Now, I don't know if that's under the title of 503c3, which might be, another one of these, corporations that's not really a person. It's just a piece of paper that can be ripped up. So I don't really know how all that works, but I heard that up there's hundreds of acres in Orange County, California. It's pretty valuable land, and during a time when the dollar turned to the peso, and were they one of those churches that was kind of going pro-Trump? Because, I'm pro-life, even as he was the biggest LGBTQ rights president ever? Oh, wow, how does that work? I don't understand. Well, anyway, I don't want to get off track here. We're focusing on Calvary Chapel. And this is a deep pit. So, are you in the miry clay? Because I still want to smoke another cigarette just to remember that parking lot, because that was so Pharisaic, that sign. I'd like to tag on it myself and say, what if the king took a drag off my organic cigarette in this lot? Would that be wrong too? Like when he healed on the Sabbath? Don't do that on the Sabbath. Yeah, something like that. Legalism, that would be a Pharisaic thing. So anyway, after I left that Calvary Chapel and looked into things a bit, I found out that when Chuck Smith started Calvary Chapel, he not only made it really comfy for the hippies by letting them come in their bare feet, which I'm all about. I'm totally shaka with that. But the other strange thing that blew me away when I one day thought maybe I could preach in a Calvary Chapel church. No, I figured out that quickly, no, that would not work for me. I would be banned from that real quick. And no, Not because of my wild hair or anything, more about my beliefs. Because if you're going to be a pastor at Calvary Chapel, you have to have proper seminary training, which, well, Calvary Chapel has their own seminary training, which actually goes really quick. And almost anybody can do it if you just stick with it long enough. But some of the seminary people that went through it, they call it a cemetery. Well, that's kind of funny. And that's where you learn to be dead? Does that have to do with all these people getting like mummies and thinking that their bridegroom won't see them as dead? I kind of wonder, because all of these pastors that are properly trained must preach end times theology correctly, according to Chuck Smith. Well, Chuck Smith, I don't remember knowing his background, but it was kind of interesting that it was very important to him that all preachers must preach a rapture, not a kingdom come. So that means that Calvary Chapel might have its own UFOs coming just for its teachers and followers. And which movie is Calvary Chapel caught up in? Would it be that one of that latest Star Trek ones where the new young Captain Kirk and the young Spock, well, there's like a feud or something and they get beamed over to beam me up, Scotty? Wait a minute. Beam me up, Scotty? Maybe Calvary Chapel and Star Trek go way back? There could be something to this, because beam me up, Scotty is a lot like rapture me up, Lord, but not a king to come, all will bow to. I think the puzzle is starting to come together. And believe this, I didn't even plan this. It just came to me now. I think it might be from my king. So anyway, beam me up, Scotty, in that movie. It happens, and well, they end up in this really cold, dark planet with a bunch of like demonic people shooting and chasing them, and it's like such a nightmare. And it's like, I didn't plan on being here. Oh, just like the rapture thinks she'll be in heaven, but the Lord's Prayer says, your kingdom come to earth as it already is in heaven. So that would mean that maybe there would be no heaven there where the rapture is planning to play. So then that just like beam me up, Scotty, in the movie, you could be there. And that planet, well, it was so cold, and that new Captain Kirk guy, I don't know his name, but he was a really good actor and pretty quick. I tell you, he ran fast. And so, well, he ended up like finding a cave to hide in from all those other creatures, demonic, that were chasing him. They looked like wild aliens beyond Alien 3. And he was all scared and just like thought he was gonna die. And he ran into this cave and was like, oh, thank you, finally. And there was somebody there. It was Spock, the original. And he was, he's kind of old now. And he was in a fur coat. And he was like, how you doing? And the guy was like, oh, this has been a disaster. And he goes, yeah, it's a tough life. But, you can learn to live here. And so now that I think about it, maybe that's all part of the plan. But it would seem to me like Calvary Chapel, if you really do have end times theology, you might want to like come out and talk about it and make clear where you're going. And are you still asking for tithes, just like when the den of thieves was exposed? Because, that was not one of the original commandments, as far as I can remember, on that. When he went up to Sinai anyway and came down, and, well, that's another thing. But are we all on the same page here? And are the greatest two commandments just to love God right and your neighbor as yourself? That would have fixed everything a long time ago, our king said before they killed him. But yet, you've deleted those words too, Calvary Chapel? Oh, but your worship pastors, how much do they get paid as the dollar turns to the peso and everybody goes more homeless every day? Oh, wow. Where is your heart, Calvary? Because now Chuck Smith, I think he died already, but I don't know what his kids are doing, but I guess they got plenty of property. Maybe they can ride some horses and feel free. Because I don't know, but the Revelation 2 is coming pretty quick, and that's when that king comes that all bow to, and the ones that aren't bowing, like maybe the ones that are going the UFO, I don't know if they'll still be here, but if that UFO hasn't come yet, then before it comes, he's gonna expose it and say, hey, you chaffy. Because, see, the chaff's coming out from the wheat, and, Wheaties are all for that king who's coming, not some doctrine of men that makes sons of hell. Yeah, that might be it, because the rapture was one of the first doctrines of men that make sons of hell that I woke up to when I was really into it for a while, until a Spanish preacher asked me to read it, like in 1 Thessalonians, like reading the whole book aloud in front of him. And when I did that, I said, there is no pre-trib rapture there. And later I learned that rapture means being caught up into the king's kingdom, as in after the tribulation, for his good remnant that he wants to use for offices like governor and maybe presidents. I guess Calvary Chapel doesn't want to have any of those future leaders for 1,000 years in that kingdom to come. And are you guys anti-Catholic too, as Catholic radio prays 24/7 for a coming Philippians 2 king, and they pray to be more universalist as a church, which is what Catholic means, and actually Philippians 2 means also. And wait a minute. Also, the Muslims are praying to Allah, the Son of God King, to come, and Buddhists are awaiting the Karma King. And if Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom, isn't that what the golden rule is all about, is the golden age? So please, Calvary Chapel, please tell us your theology and your end times doctrines now, as Revelation 2 nears and the Bema seat with the judge who comes and tests all of our works, especially those of the teachers, to see what is true and what is not and why. That's when Revelation 22 comes soon, with those salt pillars all dried out, with the ocean and the dead fish from all the fake salt and lies, so that for 1,000 years there will only be truth with gold. So please do tell Calvary Chapel, where is your theology? Because I've been out of there for a while, but I don't see anything new good coming from you. And if you're not from the Sino de Satan that likes to teach that there's a Jesus been boiling in crap and he's not coming as a king, you need to show that you're not part of that chaff real quick.